Madam Chair, it's great to see you on State of the Union night. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having
You look
me.
like you're dressed up for something big here. I don't know what you're anticipating, but we just spoke with your Democratic colleague, and of course everybody is arriving here with an agenda. And I want to talk about the president's agenda because I know you're a close ally of his. He's carved out some time. He says he's going to speak for a while because he's got a lot to talk about, and I'm wondering where he should start. Is it domestic issues? Do you want to hear about affordability, or does he need to clarify what's going on the other side of the world with Iran?
I think he'll do both.
Yeah.
I think really what the American people want to hear most of is the domestic issues, domestic policies. When I'm out in the districts and when I'm traveling around, people are really concerned about the price of things.
Yeah.
And, under Biden, purchasing power reduced for American families by about $3,000. We've already increased that and clawed back about $1,200 of that $3,000. We still have work to do. But I think you'll see that in the president's agenda is really hit home all of the economic wins that we're beginning to see from the working families tax cuts or the one big beautiful bill.
Affordability, as you're pointing to now, is a real issue for everybody, of course. And he said recently in a speech at the White House that he won affordability. He said he solved it. Do you worry about a definitive statement like that as kind of a mission accomplished banner on such an important issue?
I think we have a lot, we had a massive hole that we needed to dig out, right? 9% inflation, right? That's huge. 2% growth. We're up to 5% growth, over 5% growth. Inflation is down to a little bit over 2% now. It's good. We are digging ourselves out of the hole, but we do have a ways to go. We're not there yet. And even when we get there and we get, the president, he's not playing for status quo. He wants to do better for the American people. And that's one of the reasons why I remind everybody, you should really thank Republicans, because if it wasn't for us passing the working families tax cut, every single Democrat voted to raise your taxes. Every single Democrat did. It's simple. We want Americans to keep more of their money in their pocket.
They were, of course, you're referring to the Trump tax cuts and the extension that we saw in the big, beautiful bill. That 9% inflation, of course, was the peak in the Biden administration, and they brought it down to below 3% by the time they left. The Federal Reserve, of course, has been waiting to see that get below 2% as a target. Can the president do that this year?
I think he can. I really think he can. Now, the longer the shutdown goes, with a partial shutdown, I don't think that helps. At every turn, people are trying to put roadblocks in the way. Let's all work together to do better for the American people. That's what we all want. Can't we be like the American hockey team, both women and men? It felt really good to both cheer for the same side for once.
Well, they're going to be in the room tonight.
They
at least
are.
Some of those.
They are. 5 of them from Michigan.
Players. Well, Hockey Town for you. But, the president's going to have a lot to talk about beyond the guests in the room here when it comes to immigration, for instance. The debate over the Department of Homeland Security, you referenced this partial shutdown that we're in. Are we in for a record, Congresswoman? When I talk to you, after I talk to Pete Aguilar, it sounds like you are still an ocean apart.
I wish we weren't, but think of what we're talking about and think of what they're holding the American people hostage for. We've already funded ICE. And all we're asking for the local officials in these democratic sanctuary cities is when criminals have served their sentence that are here illegally, don't release them back into the communities. Release them back to ICE so we can deport them to their native land. Why are we releasing these criminals out into the communities? That's what the fight is over. Really?
You can look at this a couple of ways. Democrats would tell you that Republicans are keeping DHS closed because you're demanding that ICE agents be masked and shouldn't have judicial warrants. How would you respond to that?
Okay. Really?
Yeah.
Democrats, just listen to what we're just talking about. Democrats are complaining because ICE agents are masked.
Yes.
Aren't they the party of masks? I mean, that's kind of funny. The sad part is we wouldn't have to do that if the Democrats wouldn't dox our ICE agents and put our ICE agents in jeopardy. So, they're full of hypocrisy.
How about
Look no further.
Judicial warrants, though, if they're entering someone's home?
The judicial warrants, I think, is a tactic used to slow the entire process down. They know that, and the American people know that. Listen, ICE is doing what they've done for centuries. They're doing their job to keep the American people safe and keep violent people off of our streets. Look at the crime numbers since President Trump has taken office. They're the lowest they've been in decades. That's a good thing.
So we're illustrating not only the contours of this debate, but the very stubborn, harder edges of this debate. We could be still talking about this in the summer.
Gosh, I hope
Congresswoman,
not.
And you made the point. ICE doesn't need the money. What's going to happen to DHS, FEMA, and the Coast Guard? Would you support carving out ICE and funding those other agencies within DHS?
No, they're all together. You know what I would support? Let's support passing the bill of which the Democrats voted for on a bipartisan basis when it left the House. I remind everybody, and these are the facts, they're not political, Democrats supported that bill in committee when it came out of committee in the exact form that it is right now. Stop obstructing, stop playing games. Let's get on to doing the people's work. That's what they want.
Do you support limited strikes in Iran if the president announces tonight that we're going there?
You know, I don't see that. Well, let me talk about my strategy. I don't really want another foreign war. I don't think that the American people want another foreign war. But there's never been a better president right now to put America first and make sure that our interests are taken care of. And what I mean by that is for decades, Iran has been playing games with us with their nuclear deals. They are not good actors. They're not honest brokers. They're not honest partners. And this president is bound and determined to make sure that they hold up their end of the bargain, of which I might add that they already agreed to. And he has every intention to make sure he does that to keep our neighbors and our allies safe, as well as keeping Americans safe.
No, I'll be deeply curious to hear what he has to say about that. I'm sure you will be as well. And I really appreciate your talking about some tough issues with us this evening on Bloomberg TV and radio. Congresswoman, thank you. That's House Republican Conference Chair Lisa McClain of Michigan as we check back in with Kaylee Lyons in our Washington Bureau.